Welcome, tennis fans, to the 10th episode of Tennis Traverse, Exploring the Game, the podcast that delves into the heart of the tennis world. I'm your host, IVJ, and in today's episode, we'll be talking about the Basel and Vienna Open, as well as the upcoming WTA Finals Tournament and the Elite Trophy Tournament. But before I begin, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. This is my 10th episode. I started, I think, at the end of August, and I'm just super grateful for everyone that's here because honestly I didn't expect that many people to be tuning into my podcast, but thank you for listening. And if you didn't subscribe to my YouTube channel, you should go subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're listening on YouTube. And please make sure to give this video a comment and like this video as well. And if you want to follow my social media, please go follow it. The ad is at Tennis Traverse. That is at Tennis Traverse. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter. And if you're listening on other podcast streaming platforms, please make sure to give my show a rating. And if you want to contact me anyways, you can just email me or DM me or leave a comment under my YouTube. And let's just get right into today's episode. So I guess I'll start off with the Vienna Open because as I am filming this episode right now, the final is actually going on. And I didn't want to record this episode after because I don't want to drag it on for too much. But let me just summarize what happened. So Vienna Open is basically a 500 tournament that is played on indoor hard courts. It took place in Austria, and a lot of entertaining matches, I think, came from this year's tournament. And of course, I'll leave the highlights to the matches down below. And also, this is a men's tournament, so there's no women competing in this tournament. But we'll start off with an entertaining match in first round, which is Grigor Dimitrov versus Lorenzo Musetti. I really like this matchup because I love Lorenzo Musetti, if you listen to my previous episodes, and I also love Grigor. So it was a wonderful matchup, and I think both played really well. The final score was Dimitrov coming on top with the score of 6-3, 6-4. And to be honest, the stats were really similar. The only notable thing I want to point out is how Lorenzo Musetti had a 60% win on first serve, whereas Grigor had an 82. So that is a really big difference. However, I feel like Grigor is just performing really, really well this year. He had a really solid year. And when I was scrolling through Instagram, some people said that this was his second best year. His first best year, of course, was 2017, but I think it was overall a really good matchup. I'll leave the link down below. Another interesting and entertaining matchup is Stefanoes Tsisipas and Dominic Thiem. I really like this matchup because the tournament is happening in Austria, and that's where Dominic Thiem is from. And Stefanoes really hasn't been performing well lately, so I'm really excited to see the matchup between those two. And Dominic Thiem ended up losing with a score of 5-7, which is a tiebreak score, and then 4-6. However, I really like this match because he gave it his all. That's what I like about Dominic Thiem. He always tries his best when playing tournaments, and despite his wrist injuries that has been bothering him, which caused him to not perform so well, he keeps on trying, and that's what I really admire about him. And I really hope that he can gain his form back and play awesome tennis like he always has. And I think the major stat that this game was decided on is aces, because Dominic Thiem only had 3 aces, whereas Stefanoes Tsitsipas had 10. So I think this is the major deciding factor. And then moving on to round 16, there really isn't that many interesting matches. The one match I can think about is Ben Shelton versus Jannik Sinner, because as I said in all previous episodes, he's been in my episode a lot, Ben Shelton and Jannik, and they're just performing really, really well this year. So this was an excellent matchup, especially when this is actually in a round of 32, which is the first round. And This is just super interesting because Jannik Sinner obviously won China Open, and Ben Shelton had some previous, really successful tournament. I believe he won a tournament prior to this, and that is going to be the Japan Open. So he actually beat Karatsev in 2 sets with a score of 7-5 and 6-1. So he's in really good form right now. And Sinner came out on top with a tiebreak of 7-2 and 7-5. So even though it was a 2-set win, by the score you can see that it obviously wasn't easy. And I'll leave this down in my description below as well. And then it is, I think, Grigor and Medvedev. I don't really want to talk that much about this match because the score is like 3-6, 6-2, 6-4 with Medvedev coming out on top. But it was a really entertaining match. And another match I want to talk about is Tiafoe versus Gael Monfils. It was such a funny match. I'll obviously leave the link down below as well. But Tiafoe and Monfils are both players that kind of play in an exhibition way, if that makes sense. They play with a lot of interesting techniques, and it's just really entertaining to watch them, both of them. So this was an excellent match with Tiafoe ultimately coming out on top. And then the next match I'll talk about is, I think, Rublev versus Sinner, which is the semifinals. To be honest, I really didn't enjoy this match that much because it ended with a double fault from Rublev. And Rublev, in my opinion, displayed some disturbing behaviors because once he lost, he banged his racket on his leg and it basically caused him to bleed, which I found super disturbing because, in my opinion, a lot of young people are watching tennis, and it's not really a good look for the tennis community because I know that when a player is not performing well, they're obviously frustrated, but they definitely shouldn't take it out on themselves. I get how they are frustrated about themselves. However, it just, I guess, shows how toxic someone's relationship can be. It really doesn't have to be taken out on himself, and he really didn't have to hit himself with the tennis racket. So I found that behavior to be kind of disturbing, but I think it is just a common phenomenon which hasn't been touched upon that much in the tennis community. And then the next match is Daniil Medvedev and Tsisipas. And on a lighter note, this was an amazing matchup because I love Daniil Medvedev and Stefanoes. Their matchup is super funny because they have beef with each other, a lot of beef. There's the summary of their beef on YouTube, a highlight. I'll leave the link down below. It's really funny. But ultimately, Daniil Medvedev came out on top with a score of 6-4 and 8-6 in a tiebreak for the second set. And as I'm speaking right now, the final is actually going on. So it is between Medvedev and Sinner. In my opinion, I still think Medvedev will win just because I think he's less tired or exhausted compared to Sinner. But if Sinner wins tomorrow, then you guys will prove me wrong, obviously. But I think Medvedev's gonna win. So they're currently in a first set tiebreak, and Medvedev is leading with a score of 4-1 in the tiebreak, so let's hope Medvedev wins. And then it is the Swiss indoor tournament that is going on in Switzerland, and it happens in Basel, of course. So I am going to start off what I did with the other one, just summary of interesting matchups. So there really isn't that many interesting matchups considering how a lot of players actually decided to participate in the Vienna Open because these two are going on at the same time. But one interesting matchup or entertaining matchup, I guess, is round of 32 with Andre Bublik and Casper Ruud. And I'm maybe a little biased because I love Casper Ruud, even though he got eliminated in round 2. But he played well against Bublik, and Bublik is a really entertaining player. So it was really an interesting matchup with Casper Ruud coming up on top. And I think the one deciding factor is double fault. So Casper Ruud only had 2 double faults, whereas Alexander Bublik had 12. So I think that was a major difference. And then another interesting matchup, I guess, is also Casper, which is his second round defeat against Striker. It was actually a three-setter. They kind of split the first two sets, and for the deciding set, Striker came out with 7-1. So it really wasn't a good perform. Well, Casper performed well, but he probably didn't go as far as he would hoped to, so it was just really sad for him, and he probably won't qualify for the ATP finals now, but it's okay. And then we'll talk about the final, which will be taking place shortly. So I'm recording this episode on Sunday at 10, and this is going to take place at 10:30, but it is Felix Auger-Aliassime and Hubert Hurkacz, and I think this is an interesting matchup because we didn't hear much from Felix because of all his injuries, and Hubert has been doing so well. He's been winning so many tournaments, and to be honest, I think he had a solid year, even though the beginning and the middle really wasn't that successful. However, I feel like he's managed to found himself in form. For example, he won the Shanghai Masters, right? That's like an 1,000 point, and he's just been performing well at the end of the year. So I'm really happy for him. And now we'll move on to WTA. So let's first talk about the WTA Elite Trophy. So this tournament takes place in Zhuhai, China, and basically it is a part of the not Chinese, the Asian swing, but it basically takes place in China anyways. And it was a really fun tournament in my opinion because this tournament, unlike the other tournaments, it is basically a different format for like WTA Tournament of Champions. So this basically, like, they start with group stages and the top two obviously advance. So it is really different, and players who participate they don't get eliminated if they lose one match. So it's just, you can see more players play. So the interesting matchups I want to talk about is basically for the first round not the first round, the group stage is Madison Keys and Bia Haddad-Maia. So they played in an entertaining match with Bia ultimately coming out with a score of 6-4, 6-4, which the score might not look like it was an interesting matchup because it's just like a really bland score, but it was actually really interesting with a bunch of highlights. So I'll obviously leave the link down below because both players, in my opinion, hit with a lot of power. So it was just a really interesting matchup. And I guess we'll just move on to the semifinals. So for the semifinals, Zheng Qingwen ultimately came out on top against Zhu Ling, which is another Chinese player, and it was a three-setter, and I'm just really happy for Zheng Qingwen because I talked a lot about how her coach basically parted ways from her to work with Naomi. So I think it just shows everyone how Zheng Qingwen can perform really, really well despite not having a coach because she just has been performing so well. So in her previous tournament, she actually lost the final, and in this tournament, spoiler, she also got defeated in the final. So I think this is just a really great tournament for her. So on the other side of the semifinal, which is Kasatkina versus Bia Haddad-Maia, Bia actually cruised through, and the final was actually insane. It was insane. I'll leave the highlight down below, but basically Bia won with two tiebreakers, the first one being 13 and 11, which is super tight, and the second one is 7-4, which is considerably a good tiebreak score as well. So I'm really happy that both players are performing really, really well. And now I guess we'll move on to the WTA Finals, which will happen today at 6 p.m. I'm so excited for it because it's going to be so much fun to see all the top players compete in it. But it's going to take place in Cancun, Mexico. So in case people don't know how this works, it's kind of like the WTA Elite Trophy tournament I talked about. However, it is basically the top 8 players from this year, and they're competing to see who will become the year-end champion out of these 8. And the participants are Aryna Sabalenka, Iga Swiatek, Coco Gauff, Elena Rybakina, Ons Jabeur, Jessica Pegula, Marketa Vondrousova, and Maria Sakkari. So before actually Muhova qualified, however, she had to withdraw because of injuries. I was broken because she performed super well this year. However, she had to withdraw, so Maria Sakkari stepped in. And let me break down the groups. So the first group is going to be a bachelor group, and it contains Aryna Sabalenka, Alina Rybakina, Jessica Pegula, and Maria Sakkari. And then it is the Chetumal group. Sorry if I pronounced it incorrectly. It is going to be Iga Swiatek, Coco Gauff, Ons Jabeur, and Marketa Vondrousova. So, in my opinion, I like the second group matchup better because there's obviously a lot of interesting matchups such as Iga Swiatek and Coco Gauff, obviously, and Ons Jabeur and Vondrousova since they played in Wimbledon final this year. However, I feel like the first group matchup is also pretty strong considering that they're like all of these players are top players for the WTA. So my prediction for the first group is Aryna Sabalenka will come out, and perhaps let's just say Jessica Pegula because why not? And then for the second group, I think Ons wouldn't do that well. So let's just say Coco Gauff and Iga Swiatek. And then I believe Iga will come. Actually, Coco will come out on top, and then probably against Aryna, and it's gonna be a rematch. Well, this is not like a really prediction thing. It's just what I wish will happen in a way. But I'm super excited, and today there will be two matchups. So the first one is between Alina Rybakina and Jessica Pegula at 6 p.m. and the other one is Aryna Sabalenka against Maria Sakkari. So it's going to be really, really fun, and I'm super excited. So by the time this episode comes out, you guys will obviously know who's the winner and who will take lead in the group 1 of this tournament. But yeah, I think this sums up today's episode. This is my 10th episode. I'm just truly grateful for everyone that's listening to it. And this episode is kind of all over the place because this is basically the end of the year for the tennis season. So there's a lot of small tournaments, but as well as a lot of big tournaments. And I forgot to mention, there's another Paris Masters tournament that takes place for the ATP, and it will be taking place tomorrow. Wait, sorry, not tomorrow. It will be taking place on Monday, which is by the time my episode comes out. So obviously that's going to be a really entertaining tournament as well. So there's just a lot of matchups that are going to happen and a lot of good, solid tournaments. So I'm just super excited, and I'm sorry if this is all over the place because there's just been a lot of tournaments. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys didn't give my podcast a rating, you should do that right now. And if you're listening on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel, like this video, and comment down below. Also follow my social media, that is Instagram and Twitter, using @TennisTravers. That is @TennisTravers. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye.